Have a wonderful meeting.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Water over there, please, and water.
Oh, thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.
We'll go ahead and begin. So. Last we met, you were interviewing, now you're gonna be doing the interviewing. The board's asked me to go ahead and coordinate the process, so I'll be putting together the meeting along with the meetings, the information, putting together packets for all of you, actually, with Hillary, obviously, the two of us will be putting that together. We want to go over a few things tonight as far as the process and a little bit about the open meeting law. How the process worked last time, essentially what the board did, they hired a consultant to do the work. That we're gonna be doing. Essentially, we'll be doing the work that the consultant did last time. We'll be narrowing it down, the field, preferably to 4 or 5 members, 3 members. It's totally subjective. As far as where we wind up. I think we'll probably have in excess of 20 resumes when the time comes. The resumes aren't due until September 9th, so we'll see what we have, and you'll see all the resumes that are submitted. What we will try to do is narrow that field down of the resumes that we have to a manageable number to interview, and that can be determined by the 5 of you, really. I'll have input, but it'll be your decision to make that determination, whether or not we bring 5 people into interview or whether or not we bring 10 or 11. If we feel strongly that there are, you know, 6 or 7 very strong candidates, and that's what we bring in. If we feel strongly that there are only 4 or 5, then that's what we'll bring in. And if you want to bring in 10, that's fine too. So it's really your process. And what we're looking for is for the committee, with the assistance of myself and Hillary, to get this down to the candidates that fit what the town is looking for. Hi, Marty, how are you?
Jackie.
You started without you.
It's okay.
Just going over the process. You want to do the introductions? We didn't,
Sure.
I think everybody knows everybody, but one more time for
Okay.
Marty's sake, since Dennis.
Dennis Rubina,
Yeah.
Tina Haynes.
Yeah.
Do you want them to do it themselves?
No, I
Okay.
just, yeah.
Christine Tessio, Marty Roach, and Shannon Lynn.
Okay, you got that, Marty?
Dennis, Tina,
Christine.
Christine.
Shannon.
great.
See, I got the instructions as they came back in. Just to
Okay.
make sure I- But we were just saying that the committee's job, with my assistance and Hillary's assistance, is to present to the select board a number of finalists to interview. And how many finalists will really be up to this committee. So this committee will make that determination as you go through the resumes. I think you'll have in excess of 20. I think you want to get that 20 down to a manageable number to interview. Yourselves, this committee will interview, and it may very well be that you only want to interview 4 or 5, and or it may be that they're so close you want to do, you know, more than that, 8 or 9. candidates, but that'll be really up to the committee. The first line of business for us, or the next time that we meet, will be September. Go ahead, Hillary, remind me. Oh, I keep saying the wrong day.
So we're gonna meet,
It's the 26th.
yeah, September 23rd, and you wanna tell them what we're gonna do at that meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
September 23rd, what you'll each have is a book like this with all the resumes in it, along with the position statement updated, because the position statement, which we sent out, was done by the consultants last time around. And what the consultants did was they sat and talked with the select board, they sat and talked with departments to try and get a feel for what the community was looking for. We don't need to do that again. It was just done a year ago. So it's information that was put together, and we'll use that same information. It gives us a little bit of guidance, but a lot of it's pretty obvious. I think when you look at it, you want a good communicator, you want somebody that's accessible to the public, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some good information there. There are some hard requirements, a minimum of a bachelor's degree, some experience in municipal government, preferably as a manager or an assistant, but there are variations from that as well. That's in the position statement. That information is, so we won't have to do that again, but what we'll do, when we get together on the 23rd, everyone will get a binder with all of the resumes and cover letters in them. We'll have a discussion on that time to kind of nail down where we go from there. But what you'll be able to do is take those resumes, take those books home and review them on your own. And then our next meeting, come in prepared to discuss them and discuss. Each one of us will discuss who we individually, I think, who we would like to see brought in for interviews and why, and be an opportunity really for all of us to engage on who we think are the top candidates that we want to bring in. This is really the most public of any of the meetings that we'll be having. One of the things I wanted to do was just kind of go over the open meeting law. There's a provision in the open meeting law specifically for screening committees, which we are. Boards of Selectmen cannot go into executive session to screen or interview candidates, but they can appoint a screening committee, which they have done, to do the screening, and that can be done confidentially in executive session. So we can screen the resumes and we can interview the candidates all confidentially. And that's very important, obviously, for the candidates in the recruitment process, because a lot of these people have positions now and they don't want to jeopardize them. They're very political positions, obviously, and it may hurt them. So one of the most important things is the confidentiality of the process. You'll have this book. We'd ask you not to share it with anyone. It could create a situation where we have some liability on our part because we told the candidates that this will be a confidential process. And if suddenly their name's out there, John Smith is a candidate for the position in Bellingham, and it gets back to the hometown, and maybe that person is sitting on a split board going up for a renewal of a contract, could cost somebody their job, and that has happened in the past. So it's important that we keep this information strictly confidential, and you'll have that information, as I say, to take home and be trusted with it to keep the process confidential. So when we screen the candidates, when we receive those books at the next meeting, what we'll do is we'll open the meeting just like this. We'll have a conversation about the process, where we're going, how many resumes we've received, any questions that the committee might have about the process that are good for the public to hear. And then we will go into executive session. Someone will make a motion, someone will second it to go into executive session to conduct screening of applications for the town administrative search. And that will all be, we'll prepare that information for you, so someone can just read the motion and second it. And then what we'll do is we'll shut if we're broadcasting live, we'll shut it off. We'll shut the doors and we will review those privately, with no audience at that point in time. And the information is there relative to the screening committee. And as I say, it's a provision in the law that was put in place specifically to assist towns with processes like this that can be very sensitive for candidates. So, and we don't exercise this process really for any other position other than this one. And really the first time it was exercised will be this time, because last time we used a consultant, so it's never been exercised before. because when I interviewed for this position in 1987, it was very public. So, that's a little bit about the open meeting law as it pertains to, committee activities.
Can I ask a couple
Sure.
of,
Yeah,
questions? So the first one is, so you'd mentioned previously, we had used a consultant company to do the screening. Why the change this go around?
the board wasn't satisfied, with the results of the selection committee, so they wanted to try it this way. Personally, I do like screening committees because I think it takes the process outside of, town government. It's done, somewhere else, and, it's very, very impartial, and then it comes back to the board with 4 or 5 finalists. But I understand the board's point in doing it this way. They weren't satisfied. They were very frustrated with the fact that they received 4 candidates that they couldn't agree to. So what they wanted was, well, give us 2 more. And the contract with the screening, with the consultants was very specific and very detailed. You get the 4 and that's it. Because that was what the candidates were told, and obviously the consultant does a lot of this recruitment in this field, and they have a reputation at stake. So when they tell the individuals that apply, look, we're going through this process, we're gonna recommend 4, and that's it. So those 4 finalists, before they are announced publicly, we will contact them. We will do a soft background check. We'll have a firm do that for us. We can all go on Google and see what we can find, but I want to use the firm that we use for our police and fire search, police chief searches to do that soft background check. Soft, it means they're gonna find whatever's out there, but they're not gonna get into financial records or deep dive into any of that stuff. It's a low cost way of making sure that there are no surprises when we pass on our finalists to the select board, and suddenly find out that somebody had a tough time somewhere, and we didn't disclose it. There's nothing wrong. A lot of the candidates that we meet are going to have, maybe they were terminated from position, maybe they were bought out. 2 of the 4 that were presented to the select board had, were unemployed at that time for different reasons. It happens in the political process, but that's why it was the board's position. It didn't work out that well. They wanted to let a citizen's group do it. The school committee's been successful doing that in the past. So that's kind of why I was on a search committee for a superintendent a long time ago. And we found the best candidate, and it was Cracker Jack, and I couldn't believe that we were able to attract them to Bellingham. And a year and a half later, the school committee asked me to work on buying the personnel because it was just a disaster. So, yeah, that was with the search. That was with the search firm that conducted it. We worked with the search firm. So you just never. So you do the best you can to do the background check. But the best indicator is past performance and what they've done in other communities, and that's why you try to get somebody that's got a proven track record out there.
Yeah.
It's not easy. The market is very competitive. We see it with all of our positions in municipal government. The salaries keep going up, and it's just very competitive. You're in human resources, right?
I am,
I knew
I am.
that. Yeah, I remember that from when you're interviewing. Yeah, anything else?
The other question is just that you talked about the screening of the resumes, and then you mentioned interviewing. Are we interviewing the candidates, or are we merely just looking at what they supply us?
So you're gonna get the book.
Yep.
You're gonna take that home, review them, and then the next meeting that we have following that meeting on the 23rd, so the next meeting in October, we will be discussing who we want to bring in. This screening committee wants to bring in for an interview. So yes, you'll be interviewing as many candidates as you want. And again, that will be done in closed session.
So we're gonna pick from a book of resumes
Yep.
and say these are the whatever 6, 7 that we want to interview.
Right.
And then the next step would be to actually interview them.
Yep.
Okay.
And what we'll do at that point in time is I will call up whoever those are, let them know that it's still a confidential process, let them know that they've been invited to participate in the screening process. Some will accept, some won't. It's the way it always is. And what we will have is we'll have, based on the position statement, we'll have a framework of areas that we want to go to with the candidates, not specific questions. Typically, the goal, and I know of an interview, is have the candidate do all the talking, and the less talking we do, the better, because a lot of times we'll find out more by listening. And so we'll start off, traditionally, we start off by, tell us about yourself, your experience, and why you're interested in the position and town of Bellingham. So hopefully they go on, I mean, that's their opportunity to sell themselves, so they should go on for as long as they want to go on for it. And then, but I think we'll limit it, we'll agree on a time. To limit it, the whole interview, so
People
let them
can't
know
go
that.
on forever.
Yeah, and then we'll get into the things that the position statement talks about. Financial management, tell us about your experience managing the town's budget. Tell us about your experience in economic development, how you balance it with growth. Bellingham's a community that right now has a lot of challenges relative to growth. You know, tell us about your experience negotiating contracts with unions. So we'll have categories and we'll work questions into those categories, and you all can come up with your own questions that fit into those categories and really try to keep it free flowing, and we can talk about, you know, the best approach to manage that. But we'll have specific areas that we want to talk about, and certainly if there are other areas that you want to follow up on, have follow-up questions, but there should be some structure to it, so we're handling it the same way with each of the candidates. You see, the role of the town administrator is really very broad. So there are a lot of areas to touch on with the candidates to make sure that they negotiate the contracts. You know, we negotiate, you know, all the contracts with all the bargaining groups. I think there are 6 or 7 bargaining groups. So you need to understand the law as it relates to negotiations, and hopefully you have somebody that has done negotiations. The budget preparation that starts in October, and we've Bellingham now with our enterprise funds is about an $85 million operation. So the budget's very important, and the town administrators are relied on heavily, working with the chief financial officer to present a balanced budget. And the select board and the finance committee are expecting the numbers that we give them, the estimates that we give them are accurate and aren't going to put the town in, you know, jeopardize the town's financial well-being, economic development. You know, those are areas that we get very much involved in. Oftentimes, before projects are presented to the planning board, we have working groups that, you know, evaluate projects, and that's headed up by the town planner and the building commissioner that does that. So there are a lot of pieces, and that's a lot. Most of that is spelled out in the charter. I know we included that excerpt for you as well. So that's kind of the big picture, and we'll have plenty of time to go over it. Our next meeting on the 23rd, we'll have an opportunity, because the only thing we're going to be doing is providing you with copies of those resumes, having a discussion about the things that we're talking about right now, and give it some thought. I think, you know, for a position like this, I mean, typically we set aside an hour for department head positions, and oftentimes the interview will only go 45 or 50 minutes. But I think that's a fair amount of time. It's an important position because you're looking to recommend to the select board for people that are 5 people or 3 people, whatever you determine that number is going to be, and that, you know, they're going to be considering to manage the town, hopefully for, you know, a long period of time moving forward. So yeah, I think probably we set them up an hour and give ourselves 10 minutes or 15 minutes in between each one. I don't think we overwhelm ourselves with more than a couple at a time, because it's not fair to the candidates either, because you get, you know, you get tired and disinterested, especially when you're interviewing at 4 or 5 o'clock at night. 7 or 8 o'clock rolls around and you start to get a little tired or whatever. So I think it's only fair to the candidates and to ourselves. We're not under a time constraint. I think anybody in a sitting town administrator is going to want to give at least 45 days notice, maybe even 2 months. I told the board that I will be involved until there's a transition. There's a lot coming up. We're starting all the negotiations, so we're going to get those underway. The budget process, we will have the budget pretty much the framework of the budget done the first week of January. So whoever starts this position, I think ideally it would be like the first week of January. We'll have the negotiations started so they know what they're walking into, and obviously they can take it from there and go whatever direction they want. But at least it's begun, the sides have engaged, shared positions, that sort of thing, and with the budget, there'll be a framework, so, okay, do I have the resources to at least maintain level services and that sort of thing, so they'll have that, all the budgets will be submitted, and those are two major things that person's going to be walking into, and we want to make sure that they're ready for that, and obviously I'll be involved to whatever extent I need to be, but and as I've said to the board, whoever comes into this position, they're not gonna want somebody looking over their shoulder. They're gonna wanna come in and put their mark on the position, and that's what I would do. If I was going somewhere else, yeah, I'd wanna know where my desk is, where the keys are. And I appreciate the fact that the budget's put together and the negotiations have started. And then they'll take it whatever direction they wanna go, and I think that's important, and obviously, I would be available if they needed that type of reach out, but so it's not, we're really not under a time constraint. Obviously, we'd like to have this wrapped up certainly by the end of October. We'd like to have recommendations to the select board by the end of October, so then they can have their interviews, and then ideally have somebody selected for that first week of January, so that's kind of the big picture. I know that was a lot, I don't need to ramble, but.
Has the select board come up with their timeline if, for instance, say we get done by the end of October, what their timeline then is, so that, or discuss with the select board, so that as we're interviewing potential candidates of like, okay, we're gonna try to have all our recommendations by October 31st, Halloween. Then for the next process with the select board, they're planning on taking it over from there and having this. If that's in the framework of the interview process, that would be ideal also.
Yep.
Just so that we're putting it on. And I mean, I know that can then be discussed in open meeting, so that then the townspeople know what the expectation level is on that timeline.
My expectation is ideally, they'd be conducting their interviews the first week of November.
Okay.
So that's why I say and it's kind of very similar to where we were last year. They conducted their interviews the end of October. This year, they'll be looking at conducting their interviews the beginning of November, which is fine. And again, the goal is to have as good a process as we possibly can.
Yep.
So it's just difficult, and we'd like to have it. We certainly want to have them do their interviews that first or second week in November at the latest, because once
Then you get into
Thanksgiving,
Thanksgiving.
holidays,
That's what I was thinking.
that's a terrible time for recruitment, and
And
that's
try
why,
to give somebody time to then give notice
Yeah.
to a town that I'm exiting after the first of the year.
yep.
It's hard enough when you give notice. I mean, everyone always moves on from time to time, but it's
Yeah.
because of other opportunities, not that they're miserable what they're doing.
Mhm.
So then pass that on at the end of into the holiday season.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's why it's I think we'll be able to do it quicker, but I'm just, I think we'll be able to, if we're reviewing resumes, or if you have your resumes on the 23rd, we have a conversation, then the following meeting, we pick who those candidates are gonna be.
Yeah, we had talked about, I know when we had talked
We're
about
shooting for that next.
availability, we were gonna kind of do this like in a
Mhm.
4 to 5 week process.
Yeah.
The 30th, remember Dennis, the next Monday, yeah. We were hoping to give you the resumes on the 23rd. And then come back and meet on the 30th with your notes and who you guys, want to see come in. And then we haven't determined the actual date for the interviews yet.
So if we did that on the 30th, where, we provide you all copies of the resumes, we have the discussion on the 23rd.
No, we give the resumes on the 23rd. and then-
Yeah, and then on the 30th, we have a conversation. Everybody talks about who they'd like to see come in and who they think would make the cut. So we do that on the 30th, and then we can set it up. This is where it got a little tricky. We were talking about, we think 2 weeks for the candidates. We were thinking the 14th, which is Columbus Day. I don't know how people feel about that. A lot of people travel that holiday weekend. Yeah. Yeah. But how's it, I think the.
Oh, the
candidates-
committee that we did.
Yeah.
I'm around, I don't
Yeah.
care.
We get it laid out like later in
The
the day.
candidates will make themselves available. I think.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is that we won't do all the candidates on one night anyway. So the ones that, you know, if they prefer a second date, which we haven't come up with yet, but we will come up with at our next meeting.
Yeah,
So if we did the 14th and then we've got to come up with another day, probably that week, I would think.
Just to make
But we're
it,
gonna talk about
Did
it.
you-
I'm pretty available.
is everyone working on Columbus Day?
I am not, but I'm not traveling.
Okay,
at
so
home,
because we were
that's-
thinking maybe starting them at like 5, if you guys are available, just to get going early.
Fine.
Would that work for you, Shannon?
That would work, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. That would be great. All right, so
How about the 23rd? We gotta do it 6 o'clock?
We can do,
I think if we do the interviews on the 14th, depending on how many we have, let's say you want to meet with 6, which wouldn't be, you know, you wouldn't want to do more than 3 on the 14th.
Yeah.
And then if we could, we'll pick another date, maybe the 16th or the 17th. No, 16th is bad. The 17th maybe, Dennis, no, you don't meet no, you don't meet at all anymore. You're on the
and there's
planning
no
board.
planning, I don't see planning as meeting on the 17th.
Okay. Yeah, so the zoning meets the first, and yeah, so the 17th would be open. Does that work for everybody?
5 PM that night too.
If we
Um,
can do
we-
6.
we can do
Yeah,
six,
yeah,
Yeah,
we just thought 5 because it was a holiday,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
that's great. So theoretically, we'd be done with our interviews. The 4th and the 17th, we would turn our we'll have discussions, and if we need to, if we need to set another meeting for further, deliberations on after those interviews, if we can deliberate after the 17th as to who we want to recommend to the select board, that would be great, because then we can turn that over to the, firm that's going to do the background check. They can do a thorough background check on those 4, because I'll get all of you the information that they receive, and if anyone has a hesitation based on that information, then what we would do at that point in time is reconvene and see if there isn't another candidate there. We can talk about it. We can have another meeting, but assuming we get those 4, I would be in contact once you decide who you want with the individuals to say, you know, we're ready to present you as a finalist to the select board. We're gonna do a background check. Let them get the written consent from them for this to be public and for us to do the background check. And then it goes to the select board. So that would certainly make it easy for them to get going, as we said, that first week of November, if they wanted to, or even the last week of October, possibly.
Is everyone okay with 6 PM start times on the 23rd of September and the 30th?
yes.
Okay.
23rd, 30th, 5 PM on the 14th and 6 PM on the 17th.
Correct, I will email all of
Yep.
this information.
Are we, do we typically, because we'll have probably set questions that we'll ask the candidate.
Absolutely.
Are we giving the select board the feedback from our interviews so that they're either probing in areas that, you know, maybe we're a little bit weak here that they would dive into, and to avoid them asking the same questions that we've asked?
Yeah,
How does that?
yeah, we'll try and summarize that information as best we can. And certainly to give you an idea of the type of information that, yeah, for instance, this was an individual who was a finalist, and what we're providing were reference comments. So what we'll do is we'll go and we'll get references from them and get their permission to do a background check. And then essentially what we'll do is summarize the comments that are made. So we'll have that information, but as far as giving them a good flavor for why we chose the candidates we did, I think it'll be more more a matter of what we don't want to do is give a bias.
Yeah,
Oh, this was number 1 and this person for number 4.
Yeah.
We don't want to get into that, so we'll be giving them the 4 candidates. So, I mean, it's a good question, think about it, but I think what we'll basically be doing is just giving them the feedback on the references. and, the committee's recommendation for the four, or, you know, whatever number of candidates we present.
Mhm.
Is the select board looking for like no less than three, but no more than six? Have they expressed of like what they're looking, as we mentioned, there was four and they wanted two more, so are they looking in the area that's what they would like to have is around six candidates? Because obviously, as we sit and discuss, well, you don't wanna give six if they're only, okay, these four are absolutely the cream of the crop. And again, we don't have the resumes, I'm just throwing out statistical numbers of
Yeah.
that I really wouldn't feel comfortable putting anyone but these four up, in my own personal opinion. And maybe the rest of the board, we feel that way, that it's like, no, these are the best four candidates of the town. I just didn't know if the select board had come up with, no, we want to have at least five or six or what have you.
I think 3 to 4 is optimum, but if we can only find two, and as a committee, you're saying, look, none of these other people meet what you're looking for.
Right.
So it's two. If we feel strongly about five, or this committee feels strongly about five and they get five, what the board was frustrated with last time was the fact that they couldn't have an additional two, so they have that flexibility here. If we present the board with three, and they say, look, this just doesn't work for us. We'll make it clear to those three finalists that, you know, you're a finalist, but it doesn't preclude the board from screening additional.
Asking for additional
candidates. So
candidates,
it may
okay.
very well be
Yep,
that
that's,
the board comes back and says, who else do you have? And we would be able, you know, maybe the board feels differently about candidates that we didn't, or you didn't feel were appropriate. So the answer is no, that there's not a set number, but we want to make sure that anybody that this committee feels strongly can do the job. We want to give them to them. We might have somebody that's very strong in two areas and weak in two areas, and somebody else that just the opposite.
right.
You know, let's give them a shot.
You did mention in regards to a soft background check,
Mhm.
but someone responsible for the size of the budget of this town,
Mhm.
should there not be a little bit of a financial background check done on those?
For the candidates that
Yeah.
are presented to the board, what the consultant recommended to me, actually the firm recommended to me, soft background check, we'll look into everything, make sure that there's nothing obvious out there. Then once we select who that candidate's, once the select board
last-
determines who they want.
The
Then,
finalists,
yeah, they
okay, all right,
negotiate a contract subject.
okay, that's what I wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
I got
they'll,
a little nervous when you said that.
yeah,
Okay.
they'll select subject to satisfactorily negotiating an agreement and the background check. So,
Okay.
yeah, so that's where you, because that's a little bit more in depth and, you know, a little more costly, so you wouldn't do
Yes.
that for 8 candidates,
Right.
you narrow it down but we'll do, you know, our own due diligence. I know I'll be looking to see, you know, what's out there on individuals and we'll bring that in. There's nothing wrong with talking about that. As a matter of fact, the firm that did the work last time, in their report back to the select board, they included newspaper articles. And one was complaint, just one factor in resignation for this particular individual that's forwarded on. So-and-so resigns after 3 years due to, you know, different issues. So the board knew, okay, you know, these were there, and it's up to the candidate to present it. Yes, you know, and this is what happened. And to be honest with you, I mean, you know, people, you know, a lot of times you'll have a board that you come in with and it's 5-0 and everything's great. And then there's an election and all of a sudden there may be 2 members that don't feel as strongly about that individual. And in this profession, you need to be aware of that. And the smart thing to do is to negotiate an agreement and move on for everybody's benefit, rather than I'm gonna stay here and I have a contract, and if you don't like it, too bad. That never ends well for anybody, you know, so it does happen. So you don't necessarily need to be scared unless they were, you know, terminated for some egregious offense.
Right.
Yeah.
We interview the candidates separately and in private, each one.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
so, yeah,
Yep.
Okay.
Separately in private.
just in case you want to make, you know, somebody may say something that's you really don't want to say, you know, anybody else or whatever.
Mhm.
In case you want to bring up their background and dig in a little bit, that's
Yep.
all. I don't know what flexibility we have there, you know. like you say, you get stuff like you get in the paper and stuff that's public.
Oh, I see what you're
You know
saying.
what I'm
Oh,
saying?
yeah, you can say, hey, I saw you were only, one of the candidates.
But I don't wanna hurt anybody's reputation either, you know, that's why I'm glad it's.
One of the
But we're in a closed session, so.
One of the candidates that was a finalist for this position, and actually the board ultimately was split 2-2. It was a 4-member select board at the time. One of the candidates that I thought was very strong, I watched the interviews at home. I had retired at the time and I was watching the interviews. I thought was very strong. He ended up going to another community, wasn't selected to work here, went to another community. And since time he's resigned after less than a year.
Mhm.
So it happens.
Yeah.
You know, you just can't predict.
I mean, the position statement, it's very in-depth and it's a wonderful statement, written. How many applicants do we have to date and when is resumes, when are they
September
being
9th,
set?
they'll be
September 9th.
accepted until September 2nd.
September 9th.
Yeah, and the typically what happens is the more serious candidates, at least I think the more serious candidates submit later in the process because they're worried about the confidentiality of the whole process, especially in, I don't know how it works in the private sector, but in government, public positions like this, it's very sensitive, What do you mean you're applying somewhere else?
In private, they don't have to, right? I mean, they can go right up to job offer
Mhm.
before they have to, and get a job offer before they have to tell their company that they're resigning, so
Yeah,
it's a little safer.
yeah. Here it's in the newspaper.
Yeah.
You better have told you about.
Right.
That may be one of your questions you wanna ask every applicant, how many other interviews are you doing?
Certainly, it was asked by the select board of candidates, how many other positions are you pursuing?
Yeah.
And some of them are, the salary range, I think Blackstone just hired somebody for $140,000. And, Rentham, I think the salary is up to $225,000. So if you can go from Blackstone to Rentham, I mean, you're up there applying. Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities out there, yeah. One of the things I do want to do is we will go over and anyone that's been in human resources is very sensitive to it. I know the do's and don'ts. We'll go over it more in depth. We'll try and get a cheat sheet from our town council, but it's just very sensitive. And sometimes it's not as obvious as you think. Well, I've got 3 kids, so I can't always make evening meetings. And, a candidate may say that, but that doesn't mean that we can follow up, well, who takes care of your kids when you're, when you, just things like that, we need to be very sensitive to, but we'll get a cheat sheet, there's no personal question, it's all about the job and not about anybody's, personal life or anything else, and it's very important, obviously, but we'll get some information on that as well.
I can also start twitching if.
Yeah.
I'm going back to my early days and it was, don't staple the resume or the application together because certain directions of a staple can be an indication of, and don't write on the application or the resume itself. Yeah, a separate piece of paper for notes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Yeah, we have our human resources director in on a lot of most interviews. I know she's watching tonight, so she keeps everybody in line whenever we're doing interviews, so that's very important. All right, so.
I did have another question on the town charter.
Okay,
It's from 2013.
and it's been updated, it's just that it hasn't been approved yet by the Attorney General.
Okay,
That's
that was,
why.
I was gonna say, I thought it had been approved, but
Approved by
item
town meeting.
412,
Which
has
is-
that has been removed.
Which is the residency.
Residency, yes.
Has been,
Okay, and I.
That's the question too.
that's why it's right.
And when I saw the 2013, I'm like, wait a minute, I swear it was approved already in the town meeting,
It
so,
was.
okay.
So removed and approved.
It was approved by town meeting,
Okay.
but it hasn't been approved by the Attorney General yet. So that's the second step in the process. They have to sign off on it. Actually, the legislature has to sign off on it, believe it or not, because our town charter is actually, it's a law.
It's an extension
Yeah,
of.
yeah, it's actually a law that's adopted by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as to how the town of Bellingham governs itself, so. But if you notice in there, it does say that that provision can be waived by the select board, so obviously the select board is prepared to waive that. If in fact the charter hasn't been approved by the legislature by the time they're ready to make an appointment.
Okay,
So it gives them the ability to do that. As a matter of fact, last year, all four candidates, none of them were from Bellingham or prepared to move into town within a year.
So should we be operating under the premise that the town approved charter is the one that we are following?
It's the only real significant change as far as the charter goes as it relates to the town administrator is the residency requirement.
Okay,
And the residency requirement can be waived by the select board. So in the select board is prepared to waive that. So if you look at it,
I think Larry said at our last meeting that he was expecting a, answer by mid-September.
I talked to Representative Sawyer and he seems to
It's
think
not?
it's gonna be much later.
Oh, it's gonna be later?
Yeah.
Okay.
not be a resident of the
Yeah.
town. So it's saying that the town administrator doesn't have to live in Bellingham
To get the job.
to get the
Then
job.
it goes on to say, I believe it goes on to say, but must
It's
reside
that,
within
yeah,
a year.
within 12
Yeah,
months.
within
Okay, so
12.
that's the piece that really is,
Right,
because
and
we're
then-
gonna look for people that aren't in Bellingham potentially, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
and then the
Yeah.
last sentence is the board
Maybe-
may waive the residency requirement.
And they're obviously prepared to do that. They understand
Yeah.
that. The four candidates that they had last year were all non-residents. And
Okay,
ideally, you'd like to have somebody move in, but when you think about it, it's a big investment for a 3-year contract.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it considerably narrows your pool.
absolutely. Yes, very much so. What else? Anything? Yeah, I think we're off to a good start. So the next meeting, what we'll do is, we will think about if you'd like to be the chairperson or the vice chairperson. It essentially means that you open the meeting and, you welcome the candidates as they come in. Hillary and I will work to put everything together for the meetings, but, we should organize at our next meeting. So think about that. And if you'd like to be the chairman, then at the next meeting, you would say, yeah, the first item of business will be to organize. And that will be done in public session and we'll say, does anybody want to be chairman? And if you'd like to be, say so, so that'll be the first item. Anything I'm forgetting?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Yeah.
Dennis, what was your background before you came into the role?
I was captain in the Air Force, stationed in Nebraska, getting the Boston Sunday Globe. I had just finished my master's degree in public administration.
Okay.
And I knew I wanted to get into government somewhere. And I saw this job and I was from the Boston area, so my wife and I knew that we wanted to come back to the Northeast. And saw the position, applied for it and lucky enough to get it. 2.5 years later, I applied for a position in Goffstown, New Hampshire, and I got that job. And I accepted it and told the board here that I was leaving, and I went up there, drove around Goffstown for about an hour with my wife. Wanted to get sick and I said, can I come back?
Back then, there wasn't anything up there.
We had family up there and that was it.
Yeah.
To be close to the family. It's a nice town. Goffstown was beautiful, but it was very rural. I grew up in Boston.
Yeah.
All of a sudden Bellingham, I love Bellingham, but it was just a matter of, being closer to some family up there, but I've been here and.
You were here when there was no streetlights.
That's right. You can blame it on me. Yeah.
I still remember that,
Yeah,
driving all the way to Mount St. Charles Rink for practice.
yeah. Yep, and now I've got children and grandchildren and a spot at the cemetery on Center Street, so I know I'll be here.
You'll be here forever.
Forever.
Totally.
But I'm still not a townie, right, Dennis?
Yeah.
You still don't qualify for.
No, I think you had to be here for at least 50 years.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
He's adopted.
Yeah.
Honorary.
All right. Anything else? Any questions? Yeah, so we'll have plenty of time in our next meeting, as I say, we'll get the resumes and we'll kind of go over all the procedural stuff that we need to go over and unless we want to talk about those resumes or flip through them or I have comments, it'll all be public session, but if we do kind of want to initiate the screening a little bit to talk about them, then we would go into executive session. All right. All right, great. We'll adjourn at whatever time it is.
It's 6:47.
6:47. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.